Hello, my wonderful friends. It is my first quarterly wrap up of 2024. I'm really excited to get into it. And if you're new here, I will just put a timestamp for maybe the meat and potatoes of the video that you might be looking for, where I talk about my favorites from the season. But I also just do a lot of reflection on the content I've made and my favorites from each video, stats, and just like my feelings about the quarter. So I don't know, I feel like there's different sections of the video for different people, but let's get into it. I read, oh my God, how many books? Sorry, I wasn't prepared. I read 73 books in the first 3 months. 73 books in 90 days. That's fine. Like, it sounds like a lot. It's not a lot, but like I promise I also live a full life outside of it. Maybe on my TikTok, I'll do a little montage of the other things that I do so it doesn't look like all I do is stare at words on a page. I read 21,332 pages, which averages out to a beautiful 234 a day. My stats for my average rating are the most disappointing, but we'll get into that after I talk about all of the content that I made. The most amount of books that I read for a video series was reading book community favorites. So I read 25 books across 5 different videos. These 3 and then 2 other ones were for my members' favorites, reading my members' favorites. And I didn't leave with a very high rating for anything, but that's okay. These 5 were for reading TikTok favorites. And my only 5-star to come from here is Minor Detail by Adonia Shibley. But I did have a good time with these 2, Born a Crime by Trevor Noah and The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. These 5 were booktuber favorites, and my favorite, the 5-star from here, was The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui. But again, had a good time with Trust the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson and What a Match by Mimi Grace. And then these 5 were, what were they? Oh, Instagram favorites. No 5-star. Oh yeah, there was a 5-star. Sorry. I Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. But again, had a good time with Mayfly by CJ Lead and The Wonder State by Sarah Flannery Murphy. The next most amount of books I read for a video was when I was going through my TBR closet and reading books that I have no reason for owning. These were all terrible. So that was my biggest flop of not even the quarter, but like maybe my entire channel. Anyway, the next most amount of books I read for a video was 6 in leading up to my birthday. I read a book or 2 every weekend leading up to my birthday, and I vlogged it, and no 5 stars here. But I had the best time with Faybound by Sarah Al-Arifi. I also read 6 books in my dinosaur vlog where I was reading dinosaur books. I don't have a 5-star from here, but Mislaid Parts Half Known and Jurassic Park were 4s. Oh, also The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, I liked. It was a 4 point something. And for those of you who want insight into my content, I am planning 2 more videos in line with the mermaids and dinosaur series. I'm now doing a creature series. So I have 2 more planned, 1 in summer and 1 in fall. They're gonna be interesting. Oh, also, I read 4 books in like a spin-off for reading people's favorites. I did a little bonus vlog for my channel members where I read 4 more things and didn't end up with a huge win, but Veronica Speedwell is always a good time, so it was a 4. I read 6 books? I feel like I'm missing one. Maybe it's just 5. In reading my friend's least favorite books video, Jan. My favorite from this video was What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall, but I did not end up with a 5. The Handyman Method was better than I expected though. I read 4 books in, what was this video? Oh, releases that came out in 2023 that I didn't get to that had the lowest amount of readers because I wanted to find some diamonds in the rough, and I did. Knock Knock Open Wide by Neil Sharpson was a good time. But I also quite enjoyed Housewoman by Adora Nwora. I also read 4 books in the video where I read the first chapter of a whole bunch of things on my TBR, and these were the only ones left on my TBR shelf that I gave a 10 out of 10. So it was like comparing, is the book going to be as good as the first chapter? Because these were some of my favorite first chapters. And none of them were incredible, but I did have 2 4-stars. We Sold Our Souls and The Measure. I read 6 books, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 books across 3 different episodes of reading or not stopping the vlog until I get a 5-star. And each video is an allotted year. And so I started with 1990 and Yearning was indeed a 5. Then it was 1990, oh, I don't remember, I don't care. Parable of the Sower was the 5. And the most recent one, The Memory Police, was a 5. Then I have this glorious stack of books that I wasn't reading specifically for content. And while I will be getting into a goal assessment in like a couple weeks, I just wanted to touch on that idea that one of my goals for the year was to make my vlogs have less books in them. I always do 5. I feel like 5 is a really good number for a vlog, but as you just saw, there was a couple where I only read 4 books, and I think that that was the perfect balance for me because then it left me a little more room to read things that I just wanted to read. Obviously, I got to my Literally Dead book club selections. I read some anthologies, which I really wanted to prioritize. Books that were sent to me that I didn't have room for in any videos. Brand new releases I was excited about. Obviously, getting to my TBR jar picks. A library book I was interested in, and then this that had been on my TBR shelf for a while, and a brand new release. None of those were 5 stars. So I think my number one takeaway from the first quarter is 2024 releases aren't good. I'm just kidding. Like, okay, there are 4s here, but like, this is the 2024 releases that I've read so far. Oh, Feybound also, but like, how did I not love any of these? How have I given 1 and 2 stars in this stack? I just am disappointed in myself and my own selections of what I've been reading because like, they're not really going well. I also haven't read a fantastic anthology yet. Like, none of these really did it for me. So hopefully I can find some later in the year that are great. I also haven't been reading like super incredible nonfiction. I only have 1 nonfiction that got a 5. And granted, I haven't read too many of them, and these were like 4s. So I just need to bulk up my nonfiction a little bit. And I think the craziest revelation that I'm just having is I have not given a 5-star to a fantasy this year. Like, none of you were a 5. That's crazy. My favorites were sci-fi, dystopian, speculative things. So like that maybe leans a little bit fantasy. Oh, there's another one that I think would qualify for that. And then horror. Horror is getting 5s. And then a general fiction and a nonfiction. And like, this is great. I know that for some people, they haven't had this many favorites, but like, this is only 10% of my reading. And also, these were all really heavy. And I have been picking up books that are lighter and are romance and are fun, but they never end up being 5 stars. So my reading year just feels like a little bit bleak. And my average rating overall is a 3.2 right now. A 3.2. I've given out 7 5-stars, 25 4-stars. And that's not me being stingy. It's not me being like, oh, this could have been a 5, but like, let me give it a 4. No, like they're solid 4s. 21 3-stars, 14 2-stars, 4 1-star, and 2 unrated ones. On the flip side, a positive stat is like where the books are coming from. So I read 31 books that I already owned. Like before the beginning of the year started, I already owned these books. They were on my TBR shelf, some of them for years. So I got through 31 things. I purchased and read 20 books. I got 14 from the library. I read 4 that I was sent. 1 was a reread, and 3 I read exclusively online. Like I don't even have a physical copy of them. 30 of the authors that I read were ones that I read before, so I picked them up because like I was excited about something else that they wrote. And 43 were new to me. I listened to 10 books exclusively on audio, 42 physically, and 21 that were a mix. So I don't usually do like the audiobook while I'm reading it. It's more like back and forth. So I'll read a couple chapters, then when I'm driving somewhere, I'll pop in the audiobook and then I'll flip back to the physical, whatever. I guess that's the answer to how I read as much as I do. I don't know. Also, like, this is what I do. This is what I do all day. If you go to a traditional job for 8 hours, I am doing this for, well, not 8 because I do actually have real jobs too. This is a real job though, right? I do get paid to read. What a crazy concept. 15 of the books that I read were fantasy. That was the highest amount, and I didn't love any of them. 14 were general fiction. 12 were mysteries. I didn't have a single mystery thriller also as a 5-star yet. So we are looking for some things in the second quarter. 11 were horror, 7 romance, 6 science fiction, 4 anthologies, 4 nonfiction. So I am accomplishing some of my goals. 4 anthologies is great, but I wanted to read more. I'll let you in on a little secret. I canceled my biggest video project of the year already because those anthologies didn't go well. I was reading a short story every day one short story every day for the entire year of 2024, and then I canceled it because it wasn't working. Let's get into my favorites. I have to pick 5. That's the law. Thank goodness I even have enough that I can choose a 5. You know what's, like, obviously I did the video series where like the vlogs didn't stop until I got a 5-star, but like, thank goodness I was doing that series. Otherwise I would have only had 4 5-star reads. Absolutely wackadoodle. And here's what I'll say at this point, and I think I said this at the beginning of last year too, and I was wrong because one of those books did end up in my favorites, but at this point, I think these books are great and they deserve a 5, and I don't want to shit on them, but I don't think these are going to be in my favorites of the year. I don't look at a single one of these and think this will be in my 10 favorite books of the entire year. I don't think so. In the 5th spot, I'm gonna put The Center. This is a story of a woman whose boyfriend comes home one day and can speak Urdu, which she has been wanting him to learn for a long time, and he suddenly can just speak it fluently, and she's like, oh my god, that's so weird. Have you been practicing that? Like, this is kind of romantic. And he's like, oh, I just literally learned it this past week. And she's like, that's impossible. He teaches her about this invite only program where you have to abandon everything that you know, and you can't speak to anyone, you can't do anything, like you can't leave for a full week. And somehow when you leave, you will be able to speak an entire new language. And she wants that opportunity. She goes there, she experiences it, she gets obsessed, she gets to know the people who have like created the entire thing. She's learning all about it. It's unsettling, it's really slow, and it's kind of unlike other books that I've read of this nature when somebody is getting indoctrinated into a kind of cult-like scenario. Just the intimacy of it and her kind of being fully aware of what she's gotten into. It's just a unique take on this type of story, and I had a good time with it. The next one, I'm gonna put number 4 at The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, translated by Stephen Snyder. This is a speculative, again, slow novel. It's not very plot focused or character driven. It's just this idea, and you see how the population is dealing with this situation where things are regularly being disappeared from their lives, regular everyday objects, to ensure that the population of this small island never remembers them. The memory police come into their homes and they remove any evidence of something existing. So something like flowers will cease to exist and you won't remember they ever existed. So you don't have a problem with it. It's just normal everyday life. And then the memory police come in and they take photos of flowers away from you. They take any like art that relates to flowers, any mention of flowers in a journal. But there is the rare person who can remember things, and the memory police take that very seriously and want to remove those people from the population. And we're following someone who is harboring a man who has that ability, and we just go on a journey of her providing safety for him, but also existing just in her regular life and continuing at her typist job until maybe the idea of like words will no longer exist. That's her greatest fear. It's not like the government procedural explanation kind of book that I thought it would be. It was a lot more accessible and odd than I expected. Then Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler is going to be my 3rd spot. This is a story that is dystopian and again a little surreal because we have this main character Lauren who starts the book at 15 years old and she lives current day. This was written 30 years ago, so imagine this future and the effects of climate change on the environment and on companies and the way that everybody is kind of living every man for themselves. Like there's not a lot of community, there's a lot of violence. People are just taking advantage of the fracturing of the planet. And we have Lauren who has the ability to feel physical empathy for people. So when she hurts somebody, she feels it. And she creates her own community throughout these pages and her own ideology, and people come to see her as a prophet because she writes this book of just like her own belief system to cope with the fact that there is violence and death and graphic things, scenes that we get to read throughout these pages in her life that she's witnessing. Another slow one that I had a good time with. Then number 2 is going to be a horror, Knock Knock Open Wide by Neil Sharpson. This is like Irish folklore horror, and it kicks off with this woman Attain driving one night and she witnesses something absolutely horrific that you get led into a little, like it was just a really unsettling scene. And I haven't felt that way about a horror in a while, so it really did it for me. And then suddenly you're flashing to like 20 years in the future, and these two women who are going to college together and their relationship, their romance, they're going to school, just like going to class, having friends, grappling with like their respective family traumas. And suddenly there are all of these timelines and all of these concepts, and it's all just very strange and hard to pin down and find like the right audience to recommend this to. There's also this children's TV show that the girls go and like visit the set of, where people kind of remember the show differently. And there is this dark like reason for everything. It takes a while to fully understand, and I think on a second read, this would be really beneficial and interesting. I hope that it gets an audiobook because I would love to listen to it. And then lastly, definitely the most harrowing thing that I read is Minor Detail by Adania Shibli. This is told in two parts. One where there is a Palestinian girl being tortured and murdered by Israeli soldiers. And then in the second part, it is a woman, you know, 70 years in the future, and she's learning about this thing that happened and is trying to get to the bottom of it, and is living like under occupation. And so there's only so much that she can learn and discover, so you follow her as she risks her life. It's obviously shedding light on something that is all too real. It was translated by Elizabeth Jaquette, I didn't mention. And along with obviously appreciating its intent, it's just the way that it was written was so well crafted, and pulling off this much in a novella and grabbing someone's attention in this way, I think is a real skill. So those are my 5 favorites of the season. I would recommend all of them to different people, and I'm really glad I read them. Almost every single one, or every single one here, even if it was already on my TBR, I read for a video. Like without the video concept, I wouldn't have gotten to these when I did. So I think that that's really cool. Thank you very much for watching. I hope my next quarter is better. And when I put up my stack of favorites, some of them are actually fun. Wish me luck with that. And I would love to hear what your favorite and least favorite was from the last season, because we like to mix the positive with the negative. And I'll see you later. Bye.